Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if you're out on the West Coast. I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm Mike Rossetti. I'm with the MyLibro team, and we appreciate everybody being here. I know we're getting into the final few weeks now before the holidays and wrapping up 2020, which I think most of us can agree we're pretty happy is coming to an end. And so as you join us for today's webinar, one of the things we want to talk through is what 2021 is going to look like. We have two great panelists on with us today from two libraries of very different sizes, which always brings a good perspective. And we'll be asking them a lot of questions, asking them to share some experience. So real quickly, just some introductions, and then we'll go through some housekeeping items, and then we will jump right in. First of all, I'd like to introduce Angela Nolet from the King County Library System. Angela, you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and just your quick 30-second bio or so?
Sure, happy to. I've had the pleasure of working for King County for 24 years, if you'll believe it. I wear a lot of hats. I wear the MyLibro hat, a BiblioCommons hat, a social media hat, a downloads and streaming content hat. So my days stay pretty busy, but yeah, curbside is a big focus for 2020 and looks like it will continue to be through 2022 or 21. I'm already dreaming ahead to 2022.
Yeah, well, thanks, Angela. We appreciate you being here. I also want to introduce Alyssa Borelli from the Northern Onondaga Public Library.
Hi, I'm Alyssa, and I'm with the Northern Onondaga Public Library. I'm specifically the manager of the Brewerton Library branch. We're a small special legislative system inside of the larger Onondaga County Library System, and Onondaga County is where Syracuse is located. So we're in Syracuse, New York. And as I said, we have 3 branches. I've been the manager here at Brewerton for a little bit over a year. I started in September of last year, so I had some time pre-COVID to get settled. And prior to this current position, I was the adult services librarian at one of our other locations. And I've been with NOPL, as we call ourselves, for about 5 years now.
Great. Welcome, Alyssa, and thanks for being here as well. Just to give you a quick overview of what we'll be covering today, and we'll go through a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we are recording today's session, and we're happy to share that link out to you probably tomorrow by the time we have it ready. And we'll be happy to pass that along so you can share it with colleagues, anybody else that you know in the industry that you think would be interested in our topics today. We'll take questions through our chat feature, so feel free to ask questions at any time. We have a couple members of our MyLibro team that are on today that'll be monitoring the chat. Some of those they'll answer in the chat. Others will share to the whole group, and we'll kind of talk through it and let our panelists answer as well. So like we've done with MyLibro this year, most of this webinar will be about our libraries. That's primarily what we're here for. We're here to have them share experiences, to talk about challenges they faced, ways that they've overcome those, look to the future a little bit. And towards the end, we will throw in a little bit more about MyLibro for those that are interested in the solution and might want to have a deeper conversation with us down the road. Biggest focus today, though, is talking about what we've all gone through this year, pretty much since the beginning of March, and what we're looking to in the next year. So real quickly, just a quick audience poll so we know kind of where everybody stands. If you could let us know where you are in terms of the library being open, whether you have limited access, fully open, things like that, please go ahead and answer the poll question on the screen here. Okay, and that'll stay up momentarily. So obviously here at MyLibro, we've had conversations with hundreds of libraries this year, especially since COVID started. We've been able to release a lot of our solutions and a lot of the resources within the MyLibro solution based on feedback that we've gotten from libraries. And I think one of the things you'll hear from both Angela and Alyssa is that we work very hard to kind of stay ahead of the game in terms of where libraries are going, what they're facing, and how they're evolving. But pretty commonly, the things that I think a lot of our libraries have heard, that we've heard, is that 2021, especially maybe the first 4, 5, 6 months, unfortunately might not look a whole lot different from what the past 9 months have been. But the hope is that I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that things will start to return to some semblance of normal towards the second half of the year. More importantly, though, I think a lot of people's habits have changed, and what we've seen in a lot of our libraries is that things that they thought were going to be maybe short-term solutions, like curbside service, scheduling for in-library services, things like that, are now also being looked at as from a convenience standpoint, to where those services might be something that even after COVID starts to settle down and isn't in the news all the time, that it might be something that'll still benefit a lot of their spaces and a lot of their patrons and students. So a lot of interesting conversations throughout this year. And we've really realized, I think, through all of this, how important public libraries are, and academic libraries. A lot of the schools that closed saw the same thing, but we've heard from so many of our public libraries and their patrons how much they were missed, when they were closed for those days and people couldn't come in and use the Wi-Fi or use a printer, get help with a resume, not even mentioning, looking for books and being able to just get lost in the stacks and get away from everyday life. I think we've really realized this year how vital libraries are to our communities, probably more than ever before. And that's something that we've heard over and over in those discussions. And Angela or Alyssa or both, any feedback along those lines, maybe about what you all have heard, what your staff have heard in terms of patrons coming back?
I will pop in. So we've heard a mix of things, and especially with my social media hat, some patrons don't believe in COVID, and they think that quarantining materials for 72 hours is excessive. And then we hear from the other side of patrons who are just so thankful that we're taking care of them, we're taking care of our staff, that we're really listening to our governor and the science. So yeah, we, even here in Washington State, we're hearing both perspectives. We briefly got excited, kind of at the end of October. Our governor said, hey, libraries can open for limited in-library services for up to 25% of their capacity. And so we did start going through kind of like, okay, what would that look like? How would we reallocate staffing? And as we've all seen, Thanksgiving did not go well. And the latest from our executive director says, you know what, we're not even going to try to pick a date to try to open in 2021, because we just don't know, and we're going to 100% wait until we're safe. On the social side of things, I think I'm hearing that message more from our patrons, going like, hey, I know the governor said you could open, but please don't. We'd rather stay safe. So that's what I've been hearing. How about you, Alyssa?
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that. We initially opened back up for curbside back in June, and libraries were able to open in New York State outside of New York City starting in June. And so we did that. And luckily for us, we had begun offering curbside services a couple of years ago at one of our branches. So we kind of already had a model in place that we were able to adapt for our other two locations. So for us, it was definitely something that was very scalable, and we had a lot of people just grateful they could, get library materials in some way, shape, or form. We began offering in-library access in August at 25% capacity at our locations. And unfortunately, because of rising numbers, we switched back to curbside only last week. And so we've had a number of phone calls from people who had been coming into the library. They're disappointed, but generally speaking, we hear, thank you for doing what you need to do to keep us safe. We know you'll still be there when this all dies down and we're able to come back in. So there's definitely some disappointment, but I think by and large, the majority of our patrons are extremely supportive of whatever steps we're taking to keep staff and patrons safe.
Great. So Alyssa, tell me a little bit, what are some of the goals of your library as you've all have progressed through COVID this year, and maybe how will some of those change or continue to evolve as we move into the new year?
We've been extremely fortunate. We are a special legislative district, and so our funding was very secure. We didn't have any furloughs at all, but we have lost a number of staff due to retirements. And so one of the things that we're working on balancing is what level of service can we offer that patrons are looking for, that our staff can safely and efficiently execute without becoming overtaxed. And so it's a constant balancing act that we're trying to strike because we haven't hired to fill any of these positions. So we're working on that. And then our director and our board also feel very strongly about, health and safety, and that includes mental health and safety as well. And so we've rewritten policies and done what we need to do to make sure that anyone who needs to take time off can absolutely do that. So that's something that we're definitely still working on. We're also trying to figure out how we can expand some of our current services. We had been offering a homebound delivery service for a while now. I think that started a couple years ago as well. And there's definitely some patrons who are not comfortable coming into our spaces. They're, a little medically fragile. And so we're working on how we can expand the current delivery service that we have. So we need to find a way to do that again with the staff that we have right now. And then we've also expanded the technology access. We purchased Wi-Fi extenders so patrons could sit in our parking lots and work on things if they needed to, do telehealth appointments. We already had Chromebook kits with hotspots that we loaned out to patrons for 3 weeks at a time, and we've purchased additional kits. And so we're revisiting some of our digital purchases and trying to reallocate resources to make sure that we're meeting the needs that patrons have.
Great. Alyssa, there was a question. Have you been able to replace staff, or are you guys under a freeze right now?
There's no official freeze. What we ended up doing is we did lose a couple of administrative people, so there were internal promotions to fill those positions, and we haven't replaced any of the circulation staff at this point. We're still trying to keep staffing numbers relatively low in the building. Our professional staff is actually working from home 50% of the time, doing virtual programs, ordering things like that. So we're trying to make it so that all the circulation staff can be in the building getting their full hour load. So there's no official freeze. It's just something that we're kind of holding back on. It's also pretty difficult to train new hires at this point and maintain social distancing at the same time. So something we could do if we needed to, but we're trying to avoid it if at all possible.
Sure, sure. So Angela, you all have been in a little different situation that I don't believe you, did you ever open any of your buildings? And if along those lines, maybe what are some of the goals that you all are looking at towards the new year and both and through COVID?
So no, we did not actually ever make it to the stage of opening for what we were calling limited in-library service is what we're hoping to get to eventually. For us, a lot of it was just really realizing that COVID is not the same as the pre-COVID times. And as much as our staff want to be as helpful as possible, you can't provide the same level of service that we did before. So it was really scaling back to what is the most essential and what can we do with the limited staff that we have. We've spent a lot of time having staff report back in, could I come back to work when we get to reopening? Or, am I or someone in my family at risk and I need to keep teleworking or being accommodated somehow? So for us, it's, really watching that staffing matrix. Similarly to Alyssa, we look really closely for every position that is vacant. It is not 100% like, oh, somebody left, we're going to fill it. There's going to be a hard look at, do we need to fill it? Or is that hours going to go someplace else? So it's a lot of those kinds of thoughts. For us, we opened curbside back in July, and we eventually got it out to 42 of our 49 branches. And so now that we've been delayed by opening up those in-library services, we're really starting to think about like, okay, well, how can we maybe use the staff that we have and try to open up those last remaining branches that don't have curbside, because that seems to be where that focus needs to be. And then matching with Alyssa, definitely getting those Wi-Fi extenders out in our parking lots to make sure that, people can come in and get that Wi-Fi access that they need, safely in our library parking lots.
Great. So as we continue in our panel discussion, we've posted another poll question here for our audience, just in terms of some of the thoughts that you've had coming into the new year. Maybe what are some of the library needs? We've given 4 different choices here. If you all have talked about maybe needs going into the year, we'd love to hear maybe what some of those needs are and what some of those goals will be for 2021 from you. We'll continue with our panel discussion as you answer these. So Angela, I know obviously we've been working together for about a year and a half or so, and you've seen a lot of the evolution of MyLibro. I'd be curious to hear just not even just in regards to the solution, but also learnings that you've had through these past 9, 10 months. And let's say this continues for another 4 or 5 months. How do you, what learnings have you had that are going to help you and your library continue to adapt the way that you provide services and the way that you take care of your patrons and staff?
I think the biggest one is remembering to keep listening. I think it is really easy to kind of get focused on like we have a path, we think we know what we're going to do, and let's just like keep our noses to the grindstone and just keep doing that. Our social team spends a lot of time listening to what our patrons are saying. Our social lead does a sentiments report each month where she really pulls all that data together and she says, like, look, this is where they're confused about. This is the questions we keep getting over and over again. How can we communicate better to our patrons because this is a pain point? It's, feedback on sharing that balance of how many people are glad that we're closed versus how many people are mad. Really kind of getting that pulse on our communities. Does this work 100%? No, of course it doesn't, because we all know that our communities have different technological accessibility. So, we're hearing the loud people who have the benefit and the privilege of having that social access, even when the libraries are closed. But it's better than nothing. We're at least we're doing the best that we can to do that listening. The other thing that I've really been paying attention to is realizing that, King County, 49 branches, I think it's 32 or 39 cities are in King County. Our demographics are across the board. We've got, our small tribal libraries to libraries in the heart of Redmond and Microsoft country, I should say. So we see MyLibro adapted at different rates, and so it's remembering that I can't make anybody use it. I can try to make it as easy as possible. I can try to explain it. I can work with staff to make sure that they understand. I can document and write blog posts and push out social media content to like really try to go like, this is how we're doing it. This is how it's doing it better. But at the end of the day, I can look at the stats and go like, wow, the south end of King County, which is not as socioeconomically privileged, yeah, no, they're not utilizing MyLibro because they probably don't have devices at home, be that a smartphone or a computer. I can look at the north end of King County, which is where, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, those folks are. Oh man, yeah, they understand how to use MyLibro. They send me suggestions. We heard from King County patrons who are like, it'd be just so great if I could make my schedule and then just automatically add it to my calendar. Like that's that side of the thing. So, for me, it's really trying to like walk that medium line and remember, like, I need to keep thinking about, how is the patron who has no technology whatsoever going to access MyLibro? And how do I make sure we've got those staff connection points so that the staff can take care of that patron and it is still a good experience, but we're still capturing those stats on the back end. We're still giving that branch credit for the work that they're doing. How do I reach that kind of middle user who's like, I have a computer at home, maybe I'm comfortable using the web scheduling form, but ooh man, that smartphone app, that's too much for me. So for me, I think about my patrons a lot. That's probably talking too much. Alyssa, off to you.
Perfect.
We've had the same experience. We have 3 different branches. One is right on the edge of the city of North Syracuse. One's more suburban and one's a little bit more rural, where the rates, especially of internet connectivity, are fairly low. And so at our more urban and suburban branches, there's definitely a higher level of adaptation. People are using MyLibro. They love it. They think it's great. And then at the location I'm at in Brewerton, it's not being used as heavily, but when people were able to come into the library and speak with us, we would speak with every single person who came to the circulation desk and talk about it. And so we were able to get a lot of people on board that way. We would actually walk them through how to use either the app version if they had a smartphone, or we would show them the desktop link and actually give them that kind of one-on-one instruction that enabled them to feel a little bit more comfortable with that. And overall, we felt that that personal connection has been one of the most important things we're learning about in COVID. When we initially reopened after being closed and we started offering curbside, we realized that there were a lot of our regular patrons we weren't seeing. And eventually we started making phone calls. And our service area is about 56,000 people, a little bit more than that. So it's not too large. We called almost 1,000 patrons personally, just to kind of let them know what services were available, walk them through how we were handling curbside delivery and pickup, and just giving them an opportunity to check in with us and ask any of their questions. And we found that to be really valuable because I think we've all had the experience of going somewhere and not being sure what the policies are, not knowing what to do, and being a little bit hesitant. So it made patrons feel really comfortable coming back to the library. We found there will still be some patrons who are not comfortable, and that's absolutely fine. But we've been really focusing on that personal connection and reaching out to people, and MyLibro is helping us do that.
Great.
I will tag on there. I forgot one thing that we do just for our volume of scale is we have a print piece explaining MyLibro that we put in our curbside pickup bags. And so that kind of helps route them to the online detailed blog post with like step-by-step instructions. But you know, just anything we can do to kind of help them self-serve, just because for our busy branches, just anything we can do to help them do it themselves helps us.
Great. So we've talked a lot about the patron experience and what patrons, how this has helped in certain areas. And obviously, like any solution, that you're going to have some adoption rates that are going to be much higher in some areas than others, and things are going to resonate with people a little bit differently. Let's talk from the staff perspective. I think one of the things that we heard very early on was there were a lot of libraries that were trying their own internally homegrown type curbside or contactless solutions. Many of our customers came to us this year because they were just getting inundated with phone calls and inaccuracies and things like that. We have some stats up here on the screen, just some of the feedback we've gotten from libraries on number of hours saved on phone calls and, you know, number of books being able to put back in rotation faster. What's been, and we'll start with Angela this time. What's been your experience from a staff perspective in terms of ways, maybe not just our technology, but others have helped your staff adjust to some of these new trends and policies that are in place?
That's probably the trickiest part, for sure. We paired up with our HR department and who does our training, and we kind of created a required MyLibro course, and so that was way back in like June, it was so long ago, where kind of like before we started with curbside, we wanted to make sure we gave our staff at least a couple weeks to get in there, practice with it, get comfortable with it. And I think that really helped a lot because so often staff are scared of change. I'm scared of change. Nobody likes change. And this was a huge change. Like when your entire world has gone topsy-turvy, you know, just adding this one more layer of like, oh yeah, and here's this new web interface you're going to have to use, kind of freaks people out. So anything that we can do to make it easier, make it smoother, I am always listening for suggestions. Once we got everybody onboarded and staff were kind of using it, I send out it used to be weekly, but now that the MyLibro updates have dropped to like every 2 or 3 weeks or so, every time there's a release, I send out a staff communication and I basically summarize what's different. I send them reminders. I'm like, hey, I've been getting this question a lot. Here's the answer to that question. I've got like a whole special MyLibro intranet page just for staff where I've got like key stuff documented, like what do you do if we need to like close down because there's we have wildfires and we have smoke pollution and we've got to, you know, shut down for yet another reason. Just anything I can do to make it easy for them to get what they need. Another thing that I've done is I actually shifted my work week. So instead of working the Monday through Friday admin schedule, I am working Tuesday through Saturday to match up with our branch staff. And that means my Saturday is actually a really busy day because I'm answering the questions that they have time to send me because that is now our Friday. My MyLibro page, I also kind of have a running archive of all the release notes updates, and I have somebody helping me out who should be compiling an index for me of all my release notes. So when somebody sends me a question, I can go like, oh yes, there are screenshots and details on the answer to that in this, this MyLibro update from this date. So I'm looking forward to getting that done. But yeah, I'm all about communication, transparency, always making it easy for them to ask me questions. I think that's the biggest thing that you can do.
Great. Alyssa, tell us a little bit about your experience through the summer.
Yes, we did have some initial staff resistance to switching to MyLibro. When we signed on, we were already offering both curbside appointments and also the in-library appointments for computer use and also for browsing. So we had both things running simultaneously, and we were one of the libraries experiencing way too many phone calls that we could not keep up with. And so for us, the initial main attraction was the fact that it would help us with the scheduling, cut down on the number of phone calls. And then we also have a number of staff who work in more than one location. And what we were finding is that the different branches were keeping track of appointments differently. And things sometimes get lost in translation when you do that. Different people have different types of annotations, different policies. Our libraries are different sizes. So for in-library use, it matters very much how many people you can have using the computers at once, or how many people you can have browsing at any given time. And so MyLibra really gave us an opportunity to make it so that everything was standardized and it was all in one very convenient location. We've also been happy with how easy it is to make changes. Before we switched back to curbside last week, we dropped from 25% capacity to about 20% capacity in the library. It's a very easy change to make. And then last week we switched to curbside entirely and removed in-library use. And again, that was a very easy switch. So staff, in the end, they're pretty happy with it, and it is definitely saving time, and also standardizing workflow is helping out a great deal.
Great. So one of the things that we've worked very hard on, and we've heard from most of our customers this year, is that it's really important, number one, to kind of stay ahead of what libraries are going to need, but it's also important to quickly be reactive to current needs. And I think the things that we've saw, Angela referenced the rollout, I think through about August or September, we were literally providing updates to the app, to the solution every single week. And all of that was based on feedback that we're getting from our 100+ partner libraries, that we were hearing over and over again, we need this to be a little bit faster, a little more customizable in the admin portal. And so the team was rolling out those updates almost weekly. Now, like Angela said, we have about every 2 to 3 weeks, there's a new update that comes out, again, with feedback from all these partner libraries. And the overall goal is to make MyLibro be able to do in one app what it used to take and what it still takes in many libraries 3 or 4 or 5 different apps to do. You've seen some of the information scrolling through the screen as our panelists have been talking. One of the things we'd love to hear from both of you as we start to get into the last part of this webinar is what are you looking at in terms of needs when it comes to tech tools and other things that you're hoping to have in your library spaces maybe next year and then even beyond? Alyssa, has there been any discussion within the library about those types of needs and those types of trends that you're seeing in terms of patron behavior that the library might need?
Yes, absolutely. One of the other major benefits we're seeing with MyLibro is the fact that we don't have an app for our ILS or for our catalog, and so MyLibro is giving us that. And it wasn't something we were initially looking for, having patrons have the opportunity to place holds and search the catalog right from within the same scheduling app, but it's been a really unintended benefit. And so now we're starting to take a look at some of the other interfaces and trying to figure out how we can combine tools, cut down on the number of separate platforms we have, and just generally make it easier for patrons to navigate. We have a pretty big digital divide here in Onondaga County, which is why we have all of those tech kits. So we're, again, planning to expand the number of tech kits that we have and also improve the amount of training that we have available. When we closed initially for 10 weeks earlier this spring, we realized that even staff had differing levels of access to technology. And so we've been making it easier for staff to get access to tools they need from home, providing more training for staff, and now we're looking forward how we can do that for patrons. So one of the main things we'll be looking for is how we can make it easier for patrons to access the tools that they do need, not only through the library, but also to fill out DMV forms, fill out their tax forms come tax season, which we're looking forward to in the next few months. So just in general, you know, the training and the ease of access are the two major things that we're looking forward moving into 2021.
Great. Angela?
So as Mike mentioned, we started working together about 1.5 years ago, and that was actually part of a Lyrasis grant KCLS won to investigate the AI side of things. One thing I would love to get back to next year is really polling our patrons and going like, hey, I know the big focus here has been curbside, curbside, curbside. But have you noticed that there's this whole amazing voice technology side of MyLibro? Are you using it? Do you like it? Does it meet all these requirements that, you know, we spent all these months talking to focus groups about? Like, what do you need in an app in order for you to use it? KCLS is a BiblioCommons library, so we do have an app. We have so many apps from so many vendors. Making sure that MyLibro brings that value add to a patron is really important to us. And we really do feel like that curbside component really is that big draw that I'm hoping will kind of lure them in to some of the other features that none of our other apps provide. Like from our focus groups, we heard like, yeah, that'd be really useful, but it'd be great if it integrated with Overdrive, and it does. So just making sure people know things like that. Our foundation was fantastic and just funded 2 24/7 lockers for us. So we're really watching that very closely. MyLibro was fantastic and did some really quick turnaround custom work for us to make sure that those don't confuse patrons when they see them in the app, because they need to see that they have items checked out, but they can't actually schedule a curbside pickup because it's in the locker. So that's something we had to get figured out. And we'll be watching that one really closely to see if we'll be ordering more lockers. From the patron side of things, it's really getting back to those bare bone essentials. They want to come in, they want to use the computers, and they want to use the printer. We've been doing some curbside printing pickup through the MyLibro curbside side of things, but some of the locations we had selected for resuming those in-library services were those communities where we really thought that they needed to use our supplies. So that's really something we're looking forward to next year, and possibly utilizing MyLibro to schedule some of those appointments to come in. We're also pretty sure we'll do the bulk of them just kind of as walk-ups, just to make sure we get the communities in as we need them. And then matching with Alyssa, yeah, COVID really did show that, yeah, all of our staff doesn't have smartphones, all of our staff doesn't have laptops or tablets. So we've spent a fair bit of time assessing those staff needs and moving materials around. One thing that we may need to do early next year to kind of help facilitate in-library services is, you know, like, how do we move around those iPad kits that we have to make it easier for staff to schedule a patron for an in-library visit when they're standing in front of you? So yeah, a lot of things to think about.
For sure. So we appreciate it. I'm glad you mentioned the, and again, if there's any questions for our panelists, we'd love to hear those. Please share them on the chat, and we'll be happy to read them aloud and ask those directly of our panelists. Many of you may be wondering at this point, you know, what does all this mean? How's the MyLibra app work? How's it look? So really, there's been a lot of movement through this year to move past what we originally were. I think when Angela first joined us, the majority of our app was a voice-based solution. It worked through Alexa devices. We were working on Google integration, and then COVID hit and kind of all the focus shifted to, you know, how do we address these immediate library needs? So I love that you brought up kind of getting back to some of the original intent. And obviously there's an ADA compliance standpoint that comes in whenever you're talking about a voice-based solution. We're able to allow the patron still to connect to the Alexa device simply by clicking, generating a code, making that connection to an Alexa device, and then being able to have an interaction just with a smart speaker in the home. Bringing things like Overdrive audiobooks and Cloud Library audiobooks and all of those types of things as well helps us to be able to give patrons the mobility to start something on their mobile device and then translate to their smart speaker at home and be able to take that continuity from one place. So driving usage, looking for ways to continue to improve the app. All the visual components that you see here have been brought about with feedback from our two panelists and many of our other libraries this year. They've asked for simplicity of search, which we've been able to bring through just a quick click and a voice interaction, keyword, title, author, subject. Lots of different ways that the patron can quickly interact, schedule pickups, schedule visits to the library, things like that, all from one space. As we go towards the future, and we'll kind of start to close with this, but Angela, I know with a lot of your feedback, we've talked through maybe bringing a little bit more of that virtual assistant into MyLibro. And we start to look next year, and we'll have more information out in January about this, but we started to look next year towards moving things in the direction of making suggestions to the patron based on interest. So because you like these books, you might also like these. And if you like this particular program or event, can we suggest these as well? What are your thoughts in terms of bringing that type of technology into a library that makes suggestions for the patron and helps them to maybe identify things that they didn't know were going on, just as a way to drive more library usage?
Great question. And that is something we talked about with our focus groups. And it was so interesting because as library people, like, privacy is so important to us. Like we don't track your borrowing history until you tell us to keep your borrowing history. And so we really wanted to deep dive into that with those focus groups. Like, what would you be comfortable with? Are you comfortable with it? And they so very quickly went into like, yeah, I'm totally fine giving up my privacy as long as the results are good. If the results are bad, then no, they don't want to give up their privacy and they are worried about it. But if you can give them relevant results, then yeah, sure, they're fine with it. So I think it's finding that magic sweet spot of making sure the recommendations are good. And as long as they are, speaking for the people of King County, I think they will be very enthusiastic. We've had that request in with a lot of our vendors over the years saying like, hey, everybody uses Amazon. They're all used to the suggestions. And what we've historically heard back from other vendors has been like, yeah, but the data that we would need in order to give good recommendations is just completely out of scope. I've spent the last year and a half doing a lot of like AI research, going to conferences, trying to read stuff. We are finally seeing that really interesting shift where that big barrier of like not having enough data and then being able to analyze that data is shifting. And it's been great working with Mike and the team at MyLibro to see how they're really kind of pushing stuff to the next level. So I'm really excited for the future.
Great. Alyssa, a little different part of the country up there in New York. What would you say is the expectation and the eagerness for this type of technology in your market?
I think it would definitely be very much welcomed. One of the services that we piloted, I think beginning in May, was a virtual reader's advisory recommendation form. And it's more popular, obviously, when patrons can't come into the library to browse themselves. They miss that opportunity. So we see an uptick then, and we're starting to see it again. But I think if patrons had the ability to get recommendations 24/7 that they could then use to get things from Overdrive or Hoopla, that would be absolutely something that they would welcome and that librarians would welcome as well. And we have a lot of different resources we use, but we can't read everything. And it would definitely be a little bit more tailored sometimes than what we are able to do ourselves. So I think it is something that our patrons would also welcome.
Great. Well, I want to thank both of our panelists for our time. We do have a few minutes left. If there's any questions, feel free to share those in the chat and we'll be happy to read those aloud. One of the things we'll let you know is that if there's an interest in some discussion in your communities and your libraries about bringing a new technology into the library, finding ways to more deeply engage patrons, to help continue to expand digital resources, not just through COVID, but beyond. We'd love to have conversations. We're very open to needs and suggestions from our library partners. We would love to have those discussions with you in terms of what you're looking for, what kind of goals you want to accomplish, and see how we might be able to help. Feel free to gather more information at mylibro.com. You can also reach me at mike.rossetti@mylibro.com. And we'll be happy to set anything up. If there's no questions for our panelists, we do have one coming in, it looks like, but just want to thank, actually, we're getting a question, which ILS system are you both using? Do you want to talk a little bit about ILS integration just briefly, Alyssa?
Sure. Yep. We use Polaris. It's one of the innovative products. So we were able to set it so that, patrons can place hold using the mobile version of the catalog through MyLibro. There is an option to have an authentication where patrons need to have items on hold before they can schedule a pickup. We did decide not to utilize that feature, but it was an option for us through Polaris as well. But it was a pretty seamless integration from what we've seen, and patrons who are using the app were able to use it very easily to search their account, search for items, place things on hold, cancel holds, whatever it is they needed to do.
Great. And Angela, Evergreen system?
Yes, KCLS is an evergreen library. So that did drag out our implementation just a wee bit, but it's done and it works, which means all of you other evergreen libraries out there should be smooth sailing. You're welcome. And then we do use that check that the patron does need to have items on hold before we'll let them schedule a pickup, because otherwise they'll just show up and want things. And unfortunately, that's not quite staff time that we have.
Yeah, and we have integrated with just about every ILS that's out there now. I think one of the ones that a lot of other apps have struggled with has been LS2, which we have developed a really good relationship with their development team, built a lot of the necessary connectors because there wasn't much of an API suite available for that solution. So we've really worked well with all of our ILS partners to find ways to be able to connect to their systems and make this as seamless as possible. Great major thanks to Angela for her patience, because Evergreen was a long implementation. I think, Alyssa, you guys might have been one of the first Polaris libraries too at that time. So to really all of our libraries that have gone through this with us at the beginning have helped us to make this much smoother for our libraries that are onboarding now and in the future. Any other questions for our panelists today? Real quick, Angela, any closing thoughts?
I think my big one is if this looks remotely interesting, give Mike a call, give me a call. I'm happy to answer questions, share resources, send you links to both staff and patron side communication points. I honestly cannot imagine trying to run curbside without the MyLibro product. And whenever somebody tries to go like, hey, did we look at this? I'm like, we did, and no. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to share knowledge, experiences. Yeah, that's it.
Great. Alyssa, closing remark?
I definitely echo that. We did do curbside using Google Docs, and we did browsing appointments using Google Docs, and it was not easy, and it was not fun, and mistakes were made. And this is definitely a lot easier for staff. It's easier for patrons. It's more accurate. The reporting dashboard is fantastic. We've been really happy with the reports we've been able to get for our board. And just the integration was easy and seamless. And I'd also welcome any questions if anyone has any later on down the road. I'm always happy to talk about it. So we've been very pleased with what we've been able to accomplish with MyLibro so far.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And we do have one other question. It says, what if you already have a library app in place? Angela, I know you mentioned you have several library apps in place. Do you want to speak to that real briefly?
Yeah, happy to. That one is actually a really easy one, because none of our other library vendors, like catalog, like BiblioCommons, that level of library app, they didn't offer it. So so that's a really easy answer to give the patron. And it's a really different experience. Like if I look at my BiblioCommons app and what it does, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but we also feel like that's the world we live in. I go to Disney Plus for The Mandalorian. I go to Netflix for The Crown. I go to BritBox for Death in Paradise. I still have my YouTube TV for general, everything else. we've kind of hit this point where it's no longer that weird to be logging into a bunch of different places to get what I want, which I know is a big shift, because we really went through the like, oh gosh, apps are everywhere. Oh, we're overwhelmed by apps. We need one app to rule them all. That doesn't really work out the way we thought it was going to. And we've kind of come back to, yeah, I try to be pickier about the apps I install, but let's be honest, I've got a different one for each flavor. So not an easy answer, but our patrons haven't struggled with it too much. I think I've actually only had to use the whole like, they didn't offer it to me through BiblioCommons answer like only 2 or 3 times, which is, that's hardly anything.
Alyssa, anything to add to that?
No, we didn't have an app, so for us it was a lifesaver. So we've been really happy with what people are able to search for the catalog. We used to get complaints all the time about patrons needing to launch the browser version of the catalog. It's definitely not easy to read on the phone, especially if you're trying to apply any sort of filter. So for us, having the catalog linked right to the scheduling for either the appointment or for the curbside has been a major time saver, and patrons are really happy with the integration. It makes things easier for them.
Great. I guess the only thing I would add to that is that if you do have apps in place and you're curious as to what the difference is, maybe what you might be able to accomplish, just set up some time to have a quick conversation with us, and we'd love to compare what you're doing, talk about your goals, and honestly, if it's not a fit, we'd be happy to share that. We'll just say, I think you got it covered. You might not need us at this point, so feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to have a conversation with anybody who's curious. Well, thanks so much. I know we're at time today, and I want to be respectful of that. We will stay on for a couple minutes if there's any other questions that people would like to share through the chat, or even turn your microphone on and ask us a question. We're happy to answer those as well. Thank you all for being here today. A special thank you to our panelists, and want to wish everybody a wonderful holiday season. I know it's going to be a very different one in a lot of places this year. So we just wish everybody a really safe and happy holiday season. And thank you all very much. Have a great day.